Creeps, come on in, quick, before this candle burns the whole library down here at Horror Hotel, where it's time for a little more mask talk with Creepy Cheapies. Now, today's mask comes from a franchise that started way back in the late 70s with a movie called Alien. And the alien from that movie, well, rather presumptuously adopted the name of Alien for himself, although he was by no means the first, last, or only alien. There have been hundreds in, movies and TV shows like Star Trek and Lost in Space and all the other shows, Doctor Who. Sure, lots of aliens in movies like Star Wars. And well, anyway, this guy calls himself Alien. And really, it would have been easier for the rest of us if he had a more specific name than that, But no, they chose not to make him a hydrodiploverta-xanthoquatapoid. No, they just went with Alien. And he looks like this. Here he is. Now, there have been many masks over the years of the aliens from the Aliens movies. Well, continuing the tradition of fantastically imaginative, artsy titles, the second one was called Aliens. And then there were others in the series, of which you may have heard. But this guy, he thinks of himself as the alien, although there are lots of aliens. But as you can see, he's got a big head. Now, prior to the release of Alien and its amazing design work by a crazy Swiss artist named H.R. Giger, prior to Giger's work in designing science fiction trappings, science fiction was predominantly decorated with circles and squares and triangles. Circles and squares if it was futuristic but earthly origin. Triangles were more popular as far as depictions of what technology from other planets might look like. And as you can see, this guy doesn't have any of those features because what with the work of Mr. Giger being enormously influential as it was, after this movie, movies started having a little bit different look. A lot of sci-fi movies stopped going with the square buttons and circular buttons and even the weird alien triangles and went with a look that came to be known as biomechanical, which sort of meant flesh and bones stuck together and mixed up with machinery and electrical looking flourishes, which is why these guys are so interesting, and this was such a unique monster. Aliens, a lot of them had big bald heads, things like that. A lot of them were hairy monsters. This was the first one to show us an alien who could have a head like a banana with treads. It was the first one, and enormously influential. As you know, if you watch any of the movies from the 80s that followed this, where other people tried to copy this the look of this general design. And now lots of masks have been done of the aliens from the Aliens franchise. But this one is a little bit unique, a little bit special. It didn't come out until 2025, and it's from the creeps at Fundotcom. It says right there, fun. Okay. Not to be confused with their competitors, drudgery.com. No, this is fun, okay? Now, the fun people came along with this one, as I said, in 2025. And the thing I like about it, it kind of looks like what the result might have been in some alternate timeline in which Don Post had come out with a mask of this character back when they were doing their Universal Monsters calendar masks and stuff like that there. Now, this particular guy does not look exactly like he came from the movie mold. I wouldn't believe it if you said this was out of the original mold from the movie. However, this is super cheap. Many of the aliens that have been done since the first movie up to today, the masks have been made at prices that require buyers to refinance their homes or, sell the wife and kids and live out of the car and all sorts of unpleasantries. But this guy, you can score one of these for like $50, which is pretty amazing because it's huge. And it is licensed. I don't know if you can see the 20th Century Studios logo on there, but it is officially licensed as an alien collectible. Now, a lot of the more expensive ones had a more sophisticated and detailed blending of certain little creases and lines and patterns. But this one really gets the job done, and it's incredible that you can get something this cool and this deluxe in that price range. And one thing I love about this one, this is very unusual, you never see this. Even the ones that cost bazillions of dollars don't normally have this little tongue with a second set of teeth. And if you're not familiar with the creatures from the movies, you might need a good look at that. See that? There's a lot of depth to that. It's kind of amazing how they put this together and get it to come out of a mold looking that realistic and that accurate to the movie. Look at that, the little tongue with the second set of teeth on there. Man, that's cool. Isn't that cool? Sure it is, you know it is. And how does it stay like this? See, other companies over the years have tried to do this, and they've either had to put plastic domes, which cost $1 bazillion, or they've had to compress the head down to make it more human shaped so that it would display right and stay in shape. Because this just doesn't want to cooperate as a design, something that sticks out a mile like that. However, this one has a thin plastic shell on the inside, which is, you won't be able to see it, so I'm not going to try to show you the inside of it, but it starts about here and goes to here. You with me? And it's just thin, clear plastic, and it's just glued in there with a few little drops of glue, and that is sufficient to hold his head out in the proper shape as it should be. And I was very impressed with this. And again, it doesn't look exactly like it came right out of the movie, but as far as being something affordable and collectible and licensed, it's nothing short of amazing that you can get this good of an alien mask for anywhere near that price range. Let me show you the back as well. All right? Yeah. There, you see that? Look at all that cool stuff going on and how much work they did to make that something that is moldable and castable and still has a pretty deluxe look, especially for this price range. Now, there was one thing I didn't like about this mask, so just for you, show you another one here, and I did something with this one. Now, see if you can guess what I did with this one, okay? And if you said, wore it to a funeral, you're incorrect, because the only thing I did to this one, or with it, or concerning it, is that I sprayed a little shiny gloss finish on the dome and on his teeth. Can you see that? Now, I've used a product for that called Liquitex Professional High Gloss Varnish. Okay, and I know you may be thinking of varnish as something that goes on furniture, but Liquitex Professional High Gloss Varnish is suitable for use on latex masks. Okay, and I just came away from the movies thinking of them as being very wet and very black and slimy and oily looking. And the way it comes, it's not completely matte finish, but it's not as shiny and wet looking as they are in the films. So, to that end, I have sprayed a little of the old Shinola onto this one, just to be more horrifying. So, obviously what you would wear with this is an alien-looking costume, which I believe they make costumes that go with this guy. I don't have one in person, so I'm not sure how good or bad the costume is. You could make something out of craft foam and such, or you could go for a sort of ironic satire look and have him wearing a suit and tie, or business casual, and he just happens to have a head like this. You could go for something like that. Or you could just have one of these on the shelf with your mask collection. Although, considering two factors, one is that he's a mile long from front to back, and considering the fact that his most interesting details aren't on his nearly faceless front, but are rather on the sides, you're probably going to want to display it sideways in your mask collection, rather than, because you won't have a shelf deep enough for that not to fall off the front onto the floor, you see. And by the way, in the movies, there's actually a skull under here, and in some versions, in some shots, you can get an idea of this being translucent and the skull being visible under there with sort of eye sockets like a human skull. However, you don't notice that in any of the movies. You can't see that in any of the movies, although you can see it in some of the behind the scenes stuff. So I get it that they decided not to try to go for that. Again, that keeps the price down to where human beings who aren't fabulously wealthy can afford a cool alien, which is Certainly going to impress the neighbors, I think. And ready for your next Halloween event, too. So, the creepy alien from Aliens. Talk about a cheapie, considering how much mask you get here. Yeah, astounding. So with that in mind, I hope to see you next week if there is a next week. It depends on whether or not I get out of here alive, what with all the aliens in my library.